How are you guys? Yeah? Are you ready to do some media access? You're in the wrong place then. Really great to see all of you here for AAJA's convention here in New York City. And as was said, we're going to try to, we want to learn more about you, and please learn more about us too. We've got a very esteemed panel here that's going to talk about media access, how to get your stories into the news, whether it be broadcast or print, digital, social media, all of those things we're going to talk about today. Just to give you a sense of our structure, and then I'll have our great panelists introduce themselves. What we're going to do is we'll start off with some introductions for about 5 minutes. Then we're going to have panelists give their best practices in one sentence. There will be 3 one-sentence best practices. That'll take about 22 minutes. And included in that, we're going to have 2 of you do a pitch, and they're going to give you their views on how you can make it better. Then for the final 60 minutes, we're going to break up into small groups and sing songs. Just want to see if you guys are awake. The best singer here is obviously Fred. No, actually it's Tiwa. Tiwa's a good singer. Ted, you a good singer? No? Or Giles? No? All right. But we're going to do that for 60 minutes. We're going to go through each and every one of your pitches so that when you do get out there, you've heard from a very experienced journalist about how to get that story, make it nice and appetizing, tasty, you know, so that we want to take that story and do something with it. So that is the way we're going to start. So let me now launch into the introductions. First off, Rajat, if you could please say hello.
Hi everyone, how are you? So my name is Rajat Bikram, and people also call me Reggie in the business and at home sometimes. And I am the evening assignment editor with a local news station here in New York called New York One News. New York One is a 24-hour operation that covers the 5 boroughs of New York City. We also have similar stations around the country that are also owned by our parent company, Time Warner Cable, in places like Texas and the Carolinas and California. And should I go into what I do? Or?
Yeah.
All right, so
sure.
I'm an assignment editor, and what that means is I'm the guy at the other end of the phone when you call a station with a pitch. So I hope to be able to walk you guys through a little bit how that works from our perspective and some things you might be able to do from your perspective to get your message out there for us to work together to craft the best possible story. And
I have to thank our panel. Was anybody here last year when we did this? You came back, really? Okay. So these guys were here last year too. So thanks to all our panelists for returning and doing this again. Tim, please.
My name is Tim Scheld, and I'm a radio news director with a local all-news radio station in New York City, WCBS News Radio 880. CBS owns 2 all-news stations in New York. If you're from New York, you know and are familiar with 1010 Winds, and actually Reg worked there for a little while and knows the folks there and actually knows the inner workings of how to get your pitch not only on New York One but also on radio. I am the news director at WCBS Radio, and I am born out of a career as a reporter. So I was on the streets with folks like Tiwa for many years. I was a reporter for about 25 or 30 years, and now I'm on the dark side. But from your perspective, I'm at least able to tell you how to navigate your way through editors, producers, to get your pitches to the right place. And I'm happy to do that because I'm being selfish about it. We're here to get stories from you as well. We're here to try and coach you on things that we think we need to be doing. This is a panel. You're actually the panelist for us, just so you know.
All set. Tiwa.
Hi, I'm Tiwa Chang. I'm a local reporter at Fox 5 News. You may have seen me because I've been fired so often. I was at 2, then 4, then 2, then 9, then 5. Even my mentor said to me, "You're starting to run out of numbers."
Social Security number.
No, that I still have. And unless you do identity theft, I'm your trick. But anyway, so I've been doing this for a long time, and I was on the panel last year, and I've got some tips on what to do, and I listen to 880 radio and watch New York One.
Hi everybody, my name's Fred Conte. I'm an anchor and producer at Reuters. I'm the rookie on this panel because I have not done this before. in my career, I spanned magazines, wires, broadcast, and cable, and now social media and the internet as well. Most of my career has been spent on the business side, covering business news and international news, but I was also a local reporter in Seattle when I was able to finally do local stories with the Asian American communities. Often I find that doing Asian American stories on a national level is a bit more difficult, but I'm ready to hear your questions as well and challenge us.
What a group we got. Fred, why don't you just start us off then? Your 3 one-sentence best practices.
One sentence. They may be general, because I haven't done this before, but first of all, do your research so that you know which media outlet is the appropriate one for your product or for the news that you're trying to pitch, and which reporter is the right person to pitch your story to. Number 2, email versus calling. I prefer email now because I'm always tracking email, even though I get 500 to 600 emails a day. But that leads to point number 3. Make sure the subject heading on your email is very specific and tells me why my viewers or I should care about the story.
Number 1, it's about a personal connection to a specific reporter or editor. You just have to develop a personal relationship. Like, I know Paul Lee. Paul Lee's given me stories, and he's called me when he's wanted stories done, like we helped stop the terrorist trials in Chinatown. So that was a good example of knowing the media. Also know how to do a pitch, a proper pitch, the right way. You got to keep it short, 2 sentences if you can. And the other thing to me, I'm going to break the rules because I always do that, but number 4 for me would be consider alternate media, not just us. OCA ignored the main media and did its own video on YouTube for Danny Chen, and actually forced all of us to watch it, and it became a big story. But it started out, they did their own video on YouTube. And it's also, you got to know about Twitter and Facebook, the social media. It's very, very important now. You don't need just, it's probably get me fired, but you don't need the traditional media alone. And you can also consider doing it yourself. And doing your own PR. And there are a lot of freelancers out there. A lot of people have been laid off. I just came from the freelance seminar. It was packed. So you have a lot of people who've been laid off, and they're happy to do short-term work. You can hire these freelancers. Contact AAJA, get our email, send to AAJA, hey, we need a freelancer to do 2 pitches for us and to do 2 videos. You'll have 30 responses. And it's a lot, that's a way to do it a professional way.
I want to go for 5?
Well, I could, but I can't. I can't read my own handwriting.
I was going to say, I apologize for reading my email, but it's the email that I sent to myself about the tips that
I do the same thing.
When you get to be my age, you need to have these things in front of you like this, and you need to have these things on your nose, sadly. I think we're going to repeat some of the same things, but I would very much say target your pitch. Make sure you know who you're pitching it to. A general pitch is fine, but it will be successful in a much more dramatic way if you're targeting it to people. The pitch to Tiwa about something that he's done a story on is going to be far more well received than something that he has no context on. So be familiar with the reporters that are doing the stories about the things that you care about or the things that you are trying to push and push. And you will see that those are the folks that you want to network in with and send a note and say, I saw your story on this. I've got something similar that you might find interesting, and that target is going to help you. Keep it tight, because I may not get 500 emails. I get a fraction of that, but it's still a significant amount of reading that we have to do, and we plow through these things. And if it's long and it doesn't get to the point right away, it will find its way to the wayside much quicker. So keep it tight. So we're targeting the tips, keeping them tight, and make them timely, because we can't get these stories on the air. I guess I can because I'm the news director, but you can't get stories on the air in most newsrooms without having a hook, as we like to call it in the business, or a reason. Now, some organizations will do it without reason, but if you have a reason, if you have a hook, if an anniversary is coming up, or an event is coming up, or you want to get the trial stopped, that's a point in time that you're trying to deal with. That would help you. So if you have a target and you're focusing on something timely, that's going to be better received.
Great stuff.
And not to quadruple down on the precision thing, but be as precise as possible. All of these guys have said it, there's a reason for that. We get a lot of pitches, we slog through a lot of them. The more concrete and precise you can be in what you are trying to tell us, the better. The second thing that I would say is, don't feel defeated if the first time we talk doesn't materialize into a story. That could be from something that happened on your end, that could be from something that happened on my end. It doesn't necessarily mean that we didn't want to do the story. It doesn't necessarily mean that there was an external factor that stopped us from doing the story. It might just have come down to resources, timing, something else that came up that day. But if you talk to any one of us, I'm sure these guys would agree, if we spoke to you about the story and we liked it and it just didn't come together, you can still use this as a resource for the next time you have something that you think is worth offering to us. I've definitely dealt with people who have seemed a little bit hurt by the fact that a story didn't come together. And I don't think that's in their best interest. I think that continuing the relationship, maintaining the relationship with the person that you were dealing with can actually bear fruit down the road, even if it didn't in the short term. And the final thing I'll say is make sure that you're telling me something that I might not already know. We all work for different stations, but a lot of the stories we do are, sometimes we do the same things. Sometimes we do the same stories, like the A block and the lead in the newspaper, like, or the 11 o'clock news or whatever. Like, sometimes they do reflect one another, but if you can come to the table with a story idea that hasn't been out there, I actually salivate for things like that. That's where, as an individual journalist, we can make a real difference in our own newsrooms, that we are able to present an idea or a concept or an occurrence, a phenomenon that hasn't been discussed before, and that's going to make our station stand out.
Great stuff, guys. I'm just going to add one to that, and that is empower the pitcher. We are going to have to go pitch for you, so make it easier for us to pitch for you. Okay, Hank, but she's going to get the clock ready.
I'm not a journalist.
No, that's the whole idea. You're a professional, though, right, Betty? Are you ready?
Ready, yeah, go.
Great. Hi, I'm from Nielsen, and we have a great report that is called The State of the Asian American Consumer. So what we do is we measure what consumers buy and watch in over 100 countries. And specifically, we know the impact of the multicultural communities here in the U.S. in terms of buying power and all of the growth spurred by immigration. So specifically for the Asian American consumer, we have highlighted everything that Asian consumers watch and buy so that marketers can really understand the impact of this growing community.
Okay.
Less than a minute?
That was 39 seconds.
Wow.
39 seconds.
Wait, can I go ahead and continue?
No. That's it.
Wait, I didn't use my time.
Okay, our esteemed panel.
I've got it. Great attempt. What I find was, so what was the headline in it? What's the thing that's going to be, I know it's a study, I know it's a survey. What I want to know,
What's the story?
yeah.
Right.
What was
Okay.
the story? I didn't know what the story was.
Yeah. So
Microphone, guys, so they can hear.
and incorporate some stats, some insights, or
There's going to be an angle, what we call the headline.
Headline.
What is going to grab everybody?
Right.
There are studies, every day I get surveys, but what are we going to tell an editor? Oh, there's another survey from Nielsen. So what?
right. Okay.
What is, as Tio said, what is the
So
story?
maybe
Yeah.
the stat, the headline would be, did you know that by 2017, the collective buying power of the Asian American community will be over $1 trillion?
That's
Yeah.
a lead, that's the
Yeah.
story. Now
Okay.
you can go and pitch that, because
Yeah.
one thing you have to remember, when we go pitch, it's our job. So if we pitch bad stories all the time, you get fired like I do all the time. So, but it's very important that the stories you pitch are accepted. So it's, when you pitch bad stories, it's bad for your career. So you're asking somebody to put their job on the line by pitching. So for your story, I did that same story that you're talking about, but I used Jeremy Lin. So during Linsanity, I said Linsanity was going to transform the Asian American market. So, but by starting with, you're saying this is a story about Asian American, marketing to Asian Americans. I didn't know what your story was until you said that.
And I think for me, the other thing I always look for is comparatives, in perspectives. how does that number you threw out of Asian Americans compare to the other minority groups or the majority white audience? Because otherwise, it doesn't mean anything to me.
And I would say quickly, 2017 is a great second paragraph or second sentence. I want to know about today, tomorrow. And our audience, we realize, is filled with people who want to know how to grow their market today, tomorrow. I mean, there are people out there that are struggling. So if you tell them that the pot at the end of the rainbow may actually be here for you now, and it's an underutilized market share. I mean, that's a great story. If you think of it that way.
You could also start with a question, say, did you know that Asian Americans now comprise 13 to 15% of the New York City population? Because I'll bet you most of the newsrooms do not know that.
So, Rich. Collect your prizes at the door. All right, we're going to give you 30 seconds. I'm just going to make it smaller and smaller, but I think you can do it in 30 seconds, right? What's your name?
Kevin Naval.
Great, and where are you from?
I am a professor at the City University of New York.
Oh, way to go, okay. Make it happen.
Hi, my name is Kevin Nadal. I'm the Vice President of the Asian American Psychological Association, and we have a lot of researchers that do a lot of studies involving Asian Americans. One study finds that Asian Americans experience discrimination even in 2013, and that the more discrimination that one experiences, even subtle discrimination, oftentimes leads to mental health issues and physical health issues. Asian Americans experience a specific type of discrimination called microaggressions, which are subtle forms of discrimination, such as being assumed to not be American, being exoticized, or being assumed to be the model minority.
How many seconds was that?
30 seconds. 36.
Wow, you got a little clock that's in your head or something? All right, guys, what do you think?
I think it's an interesting story and a good story. I think everybody in the room needs to be focused on the idea that what we're trying to do at the end of the day is find a relatable story to tell to a listening public. I mean, make no bones about it. We're in the business to draw listeners in. So the better value that we deliver in terms of our newsroom, and sometimes we do stories that we just make a judgment on that we should be doing. We know that there's value there, but your goal is to try and give me the value of doing this story. And I can see the value, but you're making me mine into it. And I think the goal should be to come here and find the value. I mean, clearly there's a moral value. I don't dispute that. But I think Richard said it before, he's got to put a paragraph together. And I don't think you put that paragraph together based on what he said just yet. I think you have the ability to start that way, but we need to make that paragraph come to life among our, the folks that we work with to get that on the air.
Kevin, I think you got a lot of energy, and that's good. Yeah, makes me want to listen. You had the word microaggression, so wow, I hadn't heard that term before. My only problem with it is, so what's new? The microaggression example you gave me, we've known that for years, and what I want to know, part of the news is, what's new? What can we learn from it? And what impact does it have? And I think that's, I think I would have passed on. As an Asian American, I'll admit, I'll always give a second shot if I see that Asian name on something, pitching something on the community, something that may have just looked over. But I guess I'm looking for what's new about it. That's all.
What's the suicide rate for Asian Americans?
There actually are lots of studies, and it depends on which study you're citing.
I had read somewhere that the suicide rate for Asian Americans, and particularly in working class communities, was much, much higher than most people thought.
Sure. There are studies that find that suicide rates are higher among elderly and among youth. Again, this is my issues. We talk from the scholarly community. We have to be very specific about what we're reporting. It's very hard for me to say that 9 out of 10 Asian Americans XYZ because it all is contingent on a specific study, the specific sample and that sort of thing. So that's another question I had in terms of, I know that you all want headlines, but from an ethical perspective as a researcher, it's hard to make such broad.
I'm not asking you to lie. What I'm
Right.
trying to point out to you is there was a professor at Columbia once told me, never tell the story of mankind, always tell the story of a single man. You could say, never tell the story of humankind, tell the story of a single person. If you told me the story of a senior who's living in Chinatown, who committed suicide because she's by herself, and after 50 years of working, has no family and committed suicide, now I'm interested. It's a human story. You tell me that story, and I might pay attention.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Do you have a case study? Are you working with someone who can present what you're trying to say in a human form? Or can you tie it to something that's happened? And I'm not suggesting that this particular instance has connectivity or not, just because I haven't done the research, but something like Vinnie Chen, right? Everybody knows that story. Is there a way that you can tie your study into that major national news event that people are familiar with? Not to force it if you can, but like Tim said, we're looking for a hook.
I did a story on Asian American poverty, the Asian American Federation did. It was a big report, and I opened it with a senior digging through garbage, looking for dinner. And that's how you tell a story.
And one more thing, Kevin, when you have, stats like that, what you might think is, the next time there is a story involving some tragedy that somehow touches upon what your study might reflect, that's when you call the media and say, hey, guess what? I've got the study, and I've got the expert who did that study, and here's what this person can say. And we can have them on the air for you or available for your paper for an interview. Then you've helped out the reporter do his or her job. It's up to us whether to say yes or no. But you've got something that then we can turn into, put that human element on, and put the research behind it. Say, hey, this is a trend, or this is what some people say.
And can I just add, if you, I was talking about targeting before, if you happen to either see a report, hear a report, read something in journalism that is connected to this kind of a story, you may see the reporter's name, maybe somebody does a mental health feature that they do. Everything doesn't have to be in the first 3 minutes of a newscast. And a lot of things deeper down have actually more time to be developed. And so target those pitches, target that idea to people who are already writing about it, people who are reporting about it, because clearly, if any of us have worked on any of these stories, I mean, look at T.Y. He's got this passion of, he remembers every story he did. He remembers the people he talked to. He remembers the subject matter. I mean, that visual of someone going through the garbage is something that will never leave him. So if somebody has a similar story and you target him, he's going to be receptive to that. And that's what I mean by targeting those stories to people who do that work.
Also, the other thing, we're always looking at experts, and they always constantly interview, like psychologists, for other stories. So if you become one of the experts, you have someone at your school who's well-spoken, and you can be an expert on other issues, that when you call on your issue, they'll be more receptive.
How would you grade the advice, 1 to 10?
I thought it was great. 10.
10.
How would you grade his pitch?
Sorry.
It was warm.
Warm. Okay, so guess what?
But he has to really want to change.
Yeah, you're going to get to redo it, you and Betty, at the end of this session. So we're going to break out later, but you're going to come on back and they're going to, well, what would you give them? A, B, C?
7 to 8.
7 to 8?
It's a good subject matter.
7 to 8 for
I
the
give him a
time?
3.
3, okay.
Reality.
T's tough.
You call me up, I wouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
A 5. You got me with microaggression. I just needed something new and something related to.
I'd go with
But
a
you got
5.
my attention.
Sorry, I'd go with a 5. I like the subject matter, but I have to steer in a direction that.
Great. You got something to work on, man. It's going to be great. And what would you give Betty, by the way? What would you give Betty?
I went too high last time, don't ask me.
Oh, that's okay.
I liked it, no. I think it was incomplete. I think she had, I think that's a good story there.
So you-
5, I would go
5?
I go 5.
5?
It was a failure, both were, to me, failures.
Yeah.
As a business reporter, the Nielsen would have caught my attention, so I would definitely have read it. I would not have reported on it just as it is, so it'll probably be about a 4 for me.
4?
Yeah.
Reg?
I'd probably give it about a 4, but I think that if you.
Hey, you and I agree on all of this stuff.
We're in the same room. I think that if you targeted it the way that we sort of have been discussing it, I mean, this, again, the subject matter, there's something in there that people do want to know about, business reporters want to know about, but you have to make sure that you present the meat.
Great. Betty, you got that, right? What would you give them? Their advice? Yeah.
Probably an 8.
8. Yeah, I am Asian American. I love these numbers things. Sorry. So, do you guys have a pitch that you can give to them now to show them that something that you've recently done to show them what a good pitch might be in your mind? So the story that you recently did.
I can give you one.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Go ahead. Yeah. Time on 30 seconds.
I opened it by saying I have an exclusive that everybody else will want. Instant attention getter. And I said, there is a detective from New Jersey who was in Maryland leaving a family affair. 2 white supremacists attacked him. He shot and killed him. Now they've arrested him for first-degree murder. And he was protecting his wife and 3 small children. I can get an exclusive interview with him. Story aired.
I'll take it. Anybody else? That was great. Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Feature story. It's not just about Domino's versus Pizza Hut. Imagine the president of Domino's is related to the president of Pizza Hut. And the person who's in between, the reason why they're related is because of the wife versus the sister. The largest supplier of pizza products will supply her brother at Domino's, but not her husband who heads Pizza Hut.
I want to be at that dinner table, actually.
Actually, I took him out to dinner and shot a dinner sequence with me.
Perfect. Anthony Bourdain Katayama. Anybody else?
We recently did a short political story. The top line would be, there are no South Asians in New York City politics, well, no elected officials in New York City politics that are South Asian. Why is that? And I was able to get in touch with a group that is working on that issue and trying to get more South Asians involved. And we interviewed them, and there it was.
And what did Preet say?
Stand by. I would do it kind of backwards. We in the newsroom have seen way too many tragedies of people who are losing their lives because of distracted driving. So we actually sat around and said, how can we tell this story in a better way? Can we go out and find people who have been affected by it, who maybe who are speaking to schools? Maybe it's the parent of a teenager that lost their life in a driving accident. Actually, in Connecticut, there was a story about a young woman, a teenage driver, who caused the death of someone because of distracted driving, and she's going to be the subject of a story because she's now. So I had a story. We didn't have the pitch, but we went after looking for it. So that's the other aspect of this session, is to make sure your information is out there and available, so that if somebody goes looking for that kind of information, they're going to find you.
And who to go to? Go
Can
for
I make
it.
a quick suggestion?
Yes.
Kyung Yoon, who stood up in the back there, is that you, Kyung? She's a former reporter,
Yep.
and now she heads a community organization. So she's actually an expert on both. I think you should bring her up here
To do what?
to be on the panel.
You want to be on the panel? We're actually dividing up right now, though.
Well,
Or-
okay,
and
but I think you
Victoria
should let her,
brings
let her comment
Definitely.
a little bit, because she was a reporter at Fox 5, where I am now, for
Sure.
10 years, and she's now is executive director of the Korean American.
Do you have something you would like to say?
Nothing, absolutely not.
He's giving you the platform.
No, and Tiwa is my personal PR agent. And
He's doing a good job.
No, I have kind of made that journey, I guess, from one side to the other, which is why I raised, what it is that I raised, and why I actually have a voice that projects. I would just say, I love, what you all had to say, that, often I find that each of us, often, whether you're a journalist or whether you are, working, many of us are fortunate in a way to be working right in the Asian American community, but many of us do not. Many of us are in whatever sphere, we're maybe the only Asian. And so there's this kind of delicate balance where you are, as an Asian American, and as Fred said, you might look at something twice because you're personally interested, and when you say this is a topic that is of interest to me, and that maybe somebody else would just not find relevant at all, but that's not enough. That it's got to be when you're pitching something, it's got to be again with that lens of like, if Tiwa's taking the story and putting his career on the line, like how do you empower him so that, and I love that idea about, for example, sort of bringing to the reporter your connections in the community, right? Bringing them, a human story and something from the grassroots, or that you would know that many of us who are working in mainstream media might not know. So sometimes it can even be just sort of be reading ethnic press much more closely, and then seeing things, or maybe seeing stories or trends like the suicides or whatever that you want to bring, but then also being able to not be so academic, but saying, here is the overall theme, but here I can get you 3 families who would talk to you about it, you know? Because I have to say, you know, earlier this year with community organizations, they're helping the most vulnerable in the not only Korean, but broader Asian American communities, and also building bridges to other communities. You know, earlier this year we had this like amazing cover story in the New York Times. It was the article, the headline was Asian Americans Gaining Influence in Philanthropy. And that was like, you know, it's a dream come true for us, and it's actually been really a nice, you know, tool for us as we're promoting ourselves. Hey, we were on the cover of the New York Times. But that came because, as Richard said, it was a lot of conversations with the immigration reporter at the New York Times. And you said that, you know, about pitching to the people who will be interested or have a particular, you know, that's making them look good. And here we were in, you know, at this time in our national kind of discourse, talking about immigrants and immigration. And this started last year during the election year, where it was always somehow positioned as immigrants are the takers. They're the ones that we got to block from coming in this country because they are just, you know, sucking us, you know. So here to pitch this idea was about, here's an immigrant community that, case, yeah, we're organizing ourselves to give back, to contribute, to make New York City better. And he liked it. He thought it was fresh because it was a way that people were not thinking about immigrants. So anyway, and then that story developed, and he did the research. But that is, and you know, that is how it came to pass that we actually got a story about Asian Americans and philanthropy on the cover of the New York Times.
Well done, well done, well done.
Yeah,
how many journalists do we have in the room here, Bobby? Because when we break up, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So look to them when in your breakout groups. They'll also be contributing to the conversation. You wanted to say something, T.Y.? Okay, great. So let's divide up. You're 5, 4, 3, 2.
But in 1 minute, in your 30-second elevator, when I was products for Epilepsy magazine,
And then kind of like more of a cultural, you know.
and immigration.
Yes, no, especially immigration.
And you saw what happened with immigration. She
Yeah.
had cultivated a reporter at the New York Times. And part of the things you could do is attend events on those topics where
Cultivate. So you have to make, I think the most important thing is the personal relationship. Because, you know, no matter what, if you've got a fantastic story, you have to
That when you put out your pitch. So the way I'll pitch to the Today Show, for instance, compared to I'll pitch for Nightly versus MSNBC, is wholly different.
Families cannot take care of them. It's an open and loving atmosphere so the families can come there and participate in their
Feel like the person you're dealing with. I mean, all of us are individuals. Like, one loves the story, one hates it. And it's just luck of the draw that you got the one that loves it.
There's 2 ways you can get out. You can get it done.